Welcome to Alimentary, the podcast series where you'll not only learn about your amazing body, how it works, and of course, why nutrition is so important, but also pick up some simple recipes, lifestyle tips, and tweaks to support you to influence your health in a positive way. Last year, I was doing a little deep dive into mushrooms and I did a course in mycotherapy, which is the application of medicinal mushrooms for human health. Now, medicinal mushrooms are macroscopic fungi. That means that they're visible to the human eye. They have been used in the form of extracts or powders for literally thousands of years, in Asian countries in particular, to alleviate symptoms of many health issues by bringing the body back into balance. They are remarkably nutrient dense, containing proteins, dietary fiber, prebiotic fiber, vitamins, minerals, and more than 100 active biomolecules, including beta glucans, terpenes, and sterols. They're also adaptogens, so that means that they work wherever is needed in the body. So, I wanted to chat to an expert, and I'm delighted to introduce you in this episode to Sophie Barrett. Sophie is a medical herbalist and naturopath with a thriving clinic in London, formulating bespoke botanicals under the Sharing Plant Wisdom namesake tailored to individuals' needs. Her clients visit her with a myriad of health challenges and imbalances, ranging from digestive to cognitive, emotional, and autoimmune. Having learnt healing traditions from around the world, it is Sophie's mission to educate and empower groups and individuals to look after their health from a preventative perspective, harnessing the healing properties of plants and fungi. Gaining a distinction in herbal medicine and naturopathy from CNM, the College of Naturopathic Medicine in London, Sophie also finds time to lecture to health practitioners at degree level whilst consulting for natural health brands. She's worked with medicinal mushroom biotech Terra in the UK and Ireland for over 2 years now, heading up education. Featured in The Times, Telegraph, British Vogue, Sheerluxe, True Health, and many other titles, Sophie also writes for a wealth of magazines and journals on health and well-being, and is set to co-host retreats to recalibrate the senses this year. Now, you'll hear us mention Terra again during the interview, and I just have to clarify that this isn't a promotion or advertisement for a particular brand. As mentioned, Sophie consults for this company, and we mention them as an example of a brand which carries out their research and has all of the relevant certifications. In the hope that we can encourage listeners to get to know the brands that they're buying, their ethos, and their quality, because they're not all equal. So check with your healthcare practitioner, or if you have a good health food shop in your locality, it is worth asking questions and having a chat with them about which is the best brand for you, so that you can get the most bang for your buck as well as obviously the health benefits. Anyway, let's get into the episode, and I know that you're going to learn a lot from my conversation with Sophie Barrett. Sophie, thanks so much again for coming on the show today. And I guess we could start off with maybe you could tell us how you first became interested in the field of medicinal mushrooms and what inspired you to focus on this area in your own practice.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, my grandfather, who I actually didn't meet, but I've been getting more information from my dad about him. He died of a heart attack after the war, but he was a mushroom grower, and he
Wow,
worked with people to really clean up the mushroom industry. So
that's
even
amazing.
yeah, and I only found out about that recently. So I feel there is like a familial link there. But my first experience was when I was early 30s. So I'd been diagnosed with a form of skin cancer at
Gosh.
quite a young age, and I was working with a medical herbalist in North London. So I was actually already training as a medical herbalist, and I was advised to go and see him to support my healing journey. And in the protocol that I was given, he used reishi. So the Latin name for reishi is Ganoderma lucidum, and it's a mushroom I now use a lot and work with a lot. But this was in my formula because it primarily, in my case, really helped my emotional health, and help with my anxiety around having to have surgery and all of these different things. And it also improved my sleep and my overall health. So that was my first experience of actually taking a medicinal mushroom or a functional mushroom. So that must have been about 15 years ago. And then through my herbal studies and training that I did at the College of Naturopathic Medicine, which was 5 years, a 5-year course, we did study some fungi when we were looking at herbal adaptogens. So my interest had been piqued, and then really I just started to get more and more interested in the field. And then I set up my own practice and started using medicinal mushrooms in my practice with my clients. And then I was put in touch with a medicinal mushroom biotech who I now consult for. So I head up their education team in the UK and Ireland, and I've been consulting for them for 2 years. So that's really been the pinnacle of my experience.
Yeah, so everything that you've learned now, you're able to bring to your teaching role. Yeah,
Absolutely, yes.
yeah. And of course, I mean, you mentioned about the when you were going through your cancer journey. I'm sorry to
Mm,
hear that you had to go through that,
yeah.
but it's so important to support our wellness through that. Never, obviously we have to have the cancer treatment, but then you have to support, as you said, your sleep and your anxiety, try and relieve that too. And that all helps you to heal better, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, the protocol that I followed, there were herbs in there, there were powerful botanicals, but really it was the reishi that I was taking in powdered capsule form that enhanced everything. And it had a good effect on my microbiome. It had a really fantastic effect on certain viruses that I'd been having issues with in the body. And it was all of these kind of knock-on additional effects that really impressed me. So I guess this holistic effect that these functional mushrooms can have.
Amazing. So you mentioned your grandfather was involved in the mushroom industry. Would you have any examples of, say, any historical uses of medicinal mushrooms? Maybe the certain cultures or traditional medicine systems that would have used them.
Yeah, I mean, medicinal mushroom use dates back to ancient times.
Okay.
So I guess the usage in traditional Chinese medicine probably has the longest history of use. And reishi is really documented in that around about 200 AD in a classic herbal text called the Shen Nong Ben Cao. So, that's really where a lot of historical use is documented. But also in terms of European use, a reference a lot of people talk about is Otzi the Iceman. And he was mummified and found with a mushroom called Polyporus, which has lots of different uses. And there's different versions of this story. Some people say this mushroom was found around his neck, and some people say it was found in a pouch he was carrying. But the certainty there was he was carrying it for a functional reason. And some people think, he was carrying it to make a tea for an anti-parasitic effect, lots and lots of different reasons. So all cultures around the world have been using and working with these powerful gifts from nature in so many different ways.
Yeah, and of course, traditional Chinese medicine carries through today. It's still so helpful to people and enhances people's wellness in so many ways.
Absolutely. And I guess, taking it a bit further forward to the 1980s, Japan started working with specific compounds in medicinal mushrooms, specific polysaccharides called beta-glucans, and they started using them for their anti-cancer properties. So that's well documented from about the 1980s
Mm.
onwards. And now even prescription medications are 40% based on mycological sources, which I don't think
Yeah,
people realize.
of course, they're being copied.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned reishi, and that's, I think it's known as the king of mushrooms.
Yes, the
Um,
king or the
yeah,
queen.
yes, or the queen, of course. Would you say, I mean, I know there are obviously loads. I think I've studied maybe 11 or 12 strains of
Mm.
mushrooms. There are more than that. Um, is reishi the one that stands out for its unique properties? Or I know they all have different benefits.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Mm,
I refer to reishi as the multitasking
mm,
mushroom, and it's very well documented in terms of research for its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant properties, its effect on sleep, its immunomodulating effect. It's even got hormone balancing effects. So I would say this is the medicinal mushroom that's most well known and most suitable for the majority of people. So with my clients, I like to introduce them to a mushroom like reishi first. Um, However, as you said, there are about 11 or 12 of these functional mushrooms that are really being utilized, not just by medical herbalists, naturopaths, nutritionists, but they're coming much more into the food arena as well. And indeed, so many functional medicinal mushrooms do have this crossover with culinary mushrooms. So I often get asked, oh, Sophie, is there any kind of medicinal properties in the standard white button mushroom? And yes, there is, because they do contain these bioactive compounds. And obviously the ones that we talk about have the higher percentage of the beta glucans, and these really important biological response modifiers that bring about this immunomodulation, which again is what makes the mushrooms very safe to take, and very safe to take long term, even in concentrated extract form, because they are adaptogens, so they're bringing the body back into balance. So I use that word immunomodulation, and the modulation is key here because as a herbalist, I work with lots of different botanicals, and often those herbs can have fantastic adaptogenic qualities, but sometimes they can stimulate the immune system, and can only be used for short periods of time. Whereas medicinal mushrooms work on a case by case basis in the individual to balance every function in the body to bring about homeostasis. And I think that's the important distinction.
absolutely. So if someone was taking a mushroom, say for high blood pressure, they're not going to, if you take it over a long time, they'll bring it back to as you say, homeostasis, so a healthy blood pressure level, but they're not going
Mm.
to reduce it below that because they
They
adapt to,
shouldn't. They
yeah,
shouldn't. I think something to be aware of is if they're on another medication,
medication. Yeah,
then you have to kind of analyze it and watch it. And that's also for their blood sugar balancing effect. So reishi has a blood sugar balancing effect. So it depends what else they're taking, and
yes.
taking that into account as well, because they do have this effect, this quality.
Of course, with any supplements, it's always good to check your medications and make
Mm,
sure your GP knows what supplements you're on as well.
mm.
So in your clinic, have you come across any, I suppose, challenges or misconceptions, when you bring up the subject of medicinal mushrooms, and I guess
Mm.
how would you address them with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one is I always have to explain that there's no crossover with magic mushrooms. So
Yes,
with hallucinatory
yes,
mushrooms, the mushrooms we're talking about are a different genus, they're a different family altogether, and they don't have any hallucinogenic properties. They don't contain psilocybin. So I think that's the first thing I clarify. And then um, it's all about quality,
mm,
because the medicinal mushroom market has exploded, and now there's so many different products out there, which is great. However, it's very hard for the end consumer to identify what is actually a good product, what is a safe product, and what is going to bring about the therapeutic effect. And I think the first thing to look out for is it has to be a certified organic product, because mushrooms are like sponges. They're natural chelators. So if there's any runoff, if there's any pollutant in the soil, that lovely edible functional mushroom will soak up and potentially become a toxic product. So the kind of safety is paramount here. And it's not just looking for the word organic, it's looking for the certification.
Yes.
And then I think the other thing I've come across in clinic where people have perhaps tried medicinal mushrooms and not had the best experience with them is if that product has been grown in a certain way. So a lot of times, particularly in the US, for speed, for manufacturing economic viability, a lot of mushroom products are grown on grain. So we call them a mushroom on grain, an MOG product, which is a product you want to avoid, just because it makes the end product very starchy. So there's lovely beta glucans I talked about before, which are a type of polysaccharide, would be in a really low ratio in a product grown on grain, and a starchy mushroom could potentially bloat someone. It could potentially feed dysbiosis in the gut, just like another nutritional product, even talking about protein and chickens fed with grain, the quality of the protein, the end result would be completely different. So it's really trying to find products that have been grown in the right way. So medicinal mushrooms in the wild, in nature, would naturally grow on wood or decaying wood. So a lot of brands can now grow mushrooms on wood chips. So this is beneficial, as well as growing them sustainably and ethically in the wild. So that's a big distinction to look out for when you're looking at what product to buy.
Absolutely. Check the brand. Always buy supplements from a good health food shop where they really know their suppliers. And these are good questions for the consumer to ask,
Mm,
you know. Um, Obviously you, through your own health journey, you had success with
mm.
particularly reishi yourself. Would you have another success story from your own clinic that you could share with us, where the mushrooms really made a big difference to the person's health, return to health journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I'd love to do is just mention maybe a few different cases quickly,
Yeah,
because
that'd be
as a
great.
herbalist, I have just been able to incorporate the mushrooms so well alongside the botanicals, and in some instances, I don't even need to use the herbs. They're that powerful. And also, I think for me, in clinic, I've been able to work with much younger clients, so children from the age of about 3 years old. I've had some really great success stories with kids who have been struggling with constant coughs, colds, flu, repeat infections. And as a herbalist, we have to be extremely careful about what botanicals we can use at such a young age with those kind of clients. So to be able to have um, medicinal mushrooms, as long as the parent has tried the child on a culinary mushroom and we know there's no pre-existing mushroom allergy, then it allows me to really go in and help their gut microbiota from a prebiotic point of view. It helps modulate their immune system, and I've been able to bring about very quick, safe results with children. So that's really how they've enhanced my practice. And then moving into the kind of 20-year-old category, I've had a lot of females coming to me with hormonal issues and viral issues. And I've been able to work with three mushrooms in particular to really balance their system and to help with viral clearance and bring about results that have even surprised their GPs within 3 months. So mushrooms like reishi, cordyceps, and Coriolis vesicular, so the common name is turkey tail. So they have been so vital to me, helping my clients struggling with particular viruses, and not just things like HPV, the human papillomavirus, but also long COVID. So they've really, really helped on that front. And then, yeah, as I also mentioned, just from a gut perspective, a gut microbiome perspective, and an emotional perspective, with I would say virtually every client coming in has some level of stress, anxiety, or sleep issues. So those would be kind of the strongest cases. Yeah.
And of course, when you heal the gut, that has a knock-on effect to mood as well, you know. So those great beta glucans really, really help to feed those good gut bacteria. So if someone is thinking about incorporating them into their daily lives, obviously there are, I suppose we should mention Hephaestus at this stage, because it is a brand. So this isn't an advertisement, obviously, for them, but they're just a brand sort of that I trust, and that you are involved with now alongside your own practice. But they grow their own. They have their own mushroom farms in Spain.
Yeah.
And they're so obviously they have all of the certifications, and they work alongside hospitals in Spain, some of the top hospitals, in so many clinical studies.
Yes.
That sorry.
It's hugely reassuring that they put 62% of profits back into clinical research and innovation. And that really stands them apart because, you know, they have their own research lab, they're working with universities, they're working with hospitals, and they're running, I think right now, up to 15 clinical trials, gold standard and independent trials, and, you know, ranging from oncology, colorectal cancer, breast cancer, right through to SIBO and Lyme's disease. So yeah, it's that research that gives, you know, practitioners like myself reassurance. And they even have their own fungal strains, so they're able to cherry pick strains of medicinal mushrooms with the highest bioactive molecules to bring about that therapeutic effect. So they really go one step further. Yeah.
If someone was thinking of incorporating them into their daily life, some of these mushrooms aren't widely available really to cook with, you know, not certainly. I mean, occasionally I see them in our local supermarket, you know, I might see shiitake or something, you know, but, you know, they're not readily available. Button mushrooms, of course, we can all have, and that would give us a certain level of benefits. So when supplementing, then, if someone wanted to incorporate them, you mentioned reishi is a good general one, but would you recommend obviously getting advice tailored?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's very nuanced, and generally speaking, medicinal mushrooms are very safe to take as long as there's no pre-existing mushroom allergy. But because so many people are on a range of medications, it's always good to check with a health practitioner for no drug interactions. And this is really, again, where EFAS, I believe, is the only brand that has this trial called the Medina trial, which is an independent trial on their concentrated extracts to show that there is no interaction with the drug liver pathway, so the CYP450 pathway. So for people who don't know, the best example of this is there are many herbs that interact with that pathway. The most well-known one being St. John's wort. So for instance, if someone was on the oral contraceptive pill and took St. John's wort, that herb is so powerful it would push the drug out of the system before it's had an effect on the body, so that person could potentially get pregnant.
Okay.
So what EFAS's study shows, the Medina trial, that there's no effect. So that's why EFAS have been able to go on and make these highly concentrated extracts, these nano emulsions that can be used safely alongside chemo, alongside radiotherapy, because the evidence is there to show there's no significant interaction, which is a fantastic safety study to have. But really starting off with someone who's interested in trying a mushroom, the three standout mushrooms to go for are reishi, as we said, which has this very calming effect, allowing you to focus, helping with sleep, helping with stress in general. And then lion's mane, or Hericium erinaceus, as it's known in Latin, is another one that's gaining a lot of popularity and traction for its effect, not only on digestion, but on the gut-brain axis. So again, it helps with focus, cognition, memory, but it just is brilliant for the gut. It's a brilliant prebiotic. It even has this effect regenerating the intestinal mucosa, so the gut lining, and lots of people are suffering with the integrity of the gut lining, and something we would refer to as leaky gut. So it has this real repair effect and regenerative effect, not only on the gut, but on the gut-brain axis, and it even increases something called NGF, or nerve growth factor, which is where it comes in with cognition and mental acuity. So from a preventative perspective, this is the angle I really like to take with my clients, is get in there preventatively. That's why it's so nice to work with younger people
Yes.
to do the work.
Absolutely. Before they start taking a lot of medications where you just have to be a little bit more careful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So lion's mane has lots of research now, in terms of Alzheimer's, dementia, all of those things. So if you do have any of those things in the family, that could be a good one to start taking in powdered form from about the age of 30 onwards. And then the other one that is getting a lot of traction, particularly in the kind of biohacker field, people that want to optimize their energy levels and their health and their metabolism, is cordyceps. So we work with a strain called Cordyceps sinensis, which is actually an endangered species. So the way that we produce it is in an algae bioreactor, to make sure it's a sustainable, clean process, and also a vegan product. So Cordyceps sinensis is really known as the mushroom of energy and vitality. So this is going to just enhance cellular oxygenation, ATP, have an amazing effect on the kidneys. It has a natural tropism for the kidneys, which in traditional Chinese medicine we refer to as the seat of our hormones, our qi, our energy. So it has this great effect, not only on the kidneys, but also on the reproductive organs. So this is a very, very popular mushroom to try, and one that you would probably notice the effect of the most quickly.
Okay. I think I read about cordyceps that back in the 90s, the Chinese Olympic team performed so well that they were all being tested for performance enhancing drugs. And it turns out that they've been on cordyceps.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. So it's a fantastic one for people in the fitness industry, for athletes, for all of those reasons. And it's also really good for people who are adrenally fatigued. So they're really burnt out, and we need to nourish their adrenals. And then it has this antiviral quality. So it is one that I use in my clinic alongside reishi, alongside turkey tail or Coriolis versicolor, because those are three very good antivirals, and they all work in slightly different different ways, and they harmonize very well together. So there's lots of research on the three of them. But again, that's what I would say to people trying medicinal mushrooms for the first time, is that you can mix and match them.
Yeah.
They are going to harmonize and work well together. I personally would go in slowly and gently, and I would start with one mushroom and just see how I feel on it. But reishi, shiitake, maitake also work very well together, and that's why you will find lots of blends and lots of formulas out there.
Amazing. There is really, the interest in holistic and natural approaches really is growing. Where would you see the future, I guess, in terms of research and public awareness? Obviously, companies like HEFAS are putting in really putting their money where their mouth is by carrying out all of this research.
Yeah.
You would be afraid that the market, as it becomes more popular, that you have all of these other companies coming in who maybe aren't doing that level of research. But in terms of public awareness, do you see people becoming smarter about what they're buying?
I do, yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I think there's a lot of education out there, and it's not all the right messaging. But I think, there's people like Merlin Sheldrake, so he's managed to really raise the profile of fungi in general, and he's even spoken to the UK government about protecting fungi and biodiversity. So I think he's doing an amazing job, which is really trickling through to the general public. And then, the research that EFAS is doing, we speak to about 80,000 practitioners in Europe, not just the UK, and in other global territories. And that research is really having a knock-on effect. And in terms of the future of medicinal mushrooms, I think the focus is generally in the UK on the microbiome. If you look at, what scientists like Tim Spector are doing around the gut, and they are starting to talk about medicinal mushrooms and their beneficial effect on the gut and the gut microbiome. So I would say in the next 2 to 5 years, the focus will be on gut microbiota and the knock-on effect that has even on cancers, brain health, depression, mood, emotional health. So I think that will still remain the focus for the next 3 to 5 years. Personally, I'm very interested in the future of botanicals and herbs and fungi through the skin, medicine through the skin, because I think this is a really interesting way where we can target different systems in the body without putting stress on the liver, the kidneys, all of these different things. And there's a serum that EFAS do with reishi, with cordyceps, and with another botanical, where the triterpenes synergize together to bring about this antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effect. And I've used that with my clients, and that's readily available to everyone on the marketplace. That's really a repair serum. It's really fitting into the beauty category and the beauty and well-being world. So I think there's huge potential there as well.
Because we do need to be aware when we buy even cosmetics and skincare products that, that whatever we apply to our skin is going inside into our blood and into our body. So that awareness that maybe we need to, investigate that a little bit, and, not buy these, the cheaper versions. You're better to reduce the amount of products we're using and buy better ones than, I've actually been using that antioxidant serum from HEFAS. It's lovely.
Yes.
And I know I gave it, I suggested it to a client who had burns from radiotherapy as well. It works really well. It's great.
Yeah.
So I think we've probably covered. I had mentioned to you that maybe we'd finish off with our top 3, but you've gone through those, which is fantastic. So we had our reishi, our lion's mane, and the cordyceps. So they're amazing recommendations. Sophie, thank you so much. I have learned so much from listening to you today. You're a mine of information, and it's so exciting, this whole development, because I think it is all about health maintenance and prevention where we can, and at least creating a good environment that if, we do get sick, that we heal better and we recover faster. That's really where the future is at, hopefully.
Yeah, and I'd be delighted to come back on and talk to you more about other mushrooms. There's a lot of research going on. There's groundbreaking research that EFAS took part in last year in terms of the chelating effects of medicinal mushrooms. So something I just briefly wanted to mention was I'm seeing a lot of high toxicity in clinics in relation to heavy metals because of environmental toxins, but also because of the food chain. So in relation to mercury in fish, and this can even affect fertility. So the NHS in England will advise that people planning for pregnancy only have 2 portions of oily fish a week. So EFAS did this study last year, which worked with 2 mushrooms that I haven't mentioned, maitake and polyporus, that are detoxifiers, they're chelators, and they work on the liver and the lymph, and they had really great results in reducing the amount of mercury in the blood and in hair samples. So you can see how wide this field is. So I just wanted to touch on that because I mentioned the 3 main mushrooms, but there is just so much
There's
more
so
to
many
talk
more.
about.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'd love to go. We could maybe in another episode go more in depth on, on one
Yeah.
particular mushroom, or, on particular health benefits. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much. It's a good point too. Obviously, we're as careful as we can be when it comes to choosing our food, but it's very difficult to know exactly, if what you're eating has no mercury or plastic in it, so to know that there are things that we can do to mitigate the effects of that is fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah, Sophie, thank you so much.
No problem. Lovely to be on the show.
For the store cupboard staple for this episode, we're going to stick within the spirit of our theme and chat about button mushrooms. It is among the most widely available and accessible in the supermarkets, and it still contains several nutrients. Now, mushrooms in general have actually been a healthy food source since the prehistoric era, so our hunter-gatherer ancestors would have eaten them. In ancient Egypt, mushrooms were considered to offer immortality, and so decrees were passed so that only the pharaohs had access to them. In ancient Rome, they were referred to as food of the gods, or cibus diorum. For the past 30 years or so, phytochemicals found in mushrooms have been studied for their anti-cancer benefits. So polysaccharides and beta-glucan components, mostly medicinal mushrooms, but even our button mushrooms contain some of these components. So while they may not be as therapeutic, they certainly are beneficial for our health. Their nutritional benefits include selenium, copper, potassium, zinc, phytochemicals, B vitamins, and fiber. Now, of course, some people may have issues with allergies to mushrooms. So if you haven't tried them before, eat a small amount to check that you're okay with them. So once you've bought mushrooms and they're in your store cupboard, what will we do with them? Well, when you're prepping them, first of all, don't wash them like other veg because they're literally like sponges, so they'll retain the water. Instead, use a paper towel or a damp cloth and clean them with that. Now you can slice them and add to an omelette or a frittata or a quiche. Now they're lovely in a beef stew. If you have the smaller mushrooms, you can leave them whole in a stew. They're gorgeous. But if you get the larger ones, you could always like stuff them with some other maybe veg and some cheese. Now, of course, garlic mushrooms are popular. You could also add them onto a skewer with other vegetables and grill them. Last week, I actually found a pack of mixed mushrooms, including shiitake, which is one of the medicinal mushrooms. And I sauteed just some onion rings, just a white onion, some butter. It was obviously vegan butter for me because I can't have dairy, but a little bit of butter and some fresh parsley tossed around with the onions. And they were just absolutely delicious. Now, with button mushrooms, they maybe don't have there's not much of a taste to them really. It's more about the texture. So if I just have button mushrooms, I'll maybe saute an onion, then the mushrooms, and then add some chopped tomatoes as well, and some dried parsley, for the last couple of minutes on the pan. And that actually is really nice too. So think of yourself like a pharaoh or an ancient Roman god and pop some mushrooms in your shopping trolley this week. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I just wanted to clarify that the podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional care from a doctor or trained health professional, nor does it constitute medical advice or services if you're in a position to need either. However, if you find it interesting, you can subscribe to make sure you don't miss future episodes or sign up for my newsletter on lynsharkeynutrition.ie.